Hamzah, can you explain what culture of innovation means to you in the context of the construction industry?
100%. And that's an extremely important part. And in the book, I also kind of reference The Culture Code, which is a book by Daniel Coyle. Amazing read, highly recommended. And in The Culture Code, Daniel talks about the three main aspects that you need in order to create a culture that's positive, that's exciting to be part of, that's inviting.
Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. The construction industry has long been in need of innovation. With the global population projected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, the challenge is to build faster, smarter, and more sustainably. Technological advances are playing a critical role in transforming how we design, plan, and execute construction projects. In this episode, I'm joined by Hamzah Shanbari, Director of Innovation at Haskell, to talk about cutting-edge technology shaping the future of the construction industry. I'm your host, Nick Heim, and this is the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast. With that, let's jump into today's episode. It's now time for our conversation of the week with Hamzah Shanbari. Hamzah, thank you so much for taking the time today and joining the show, and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot to talk about today, so we're just going to jump right into it. So Hamzah, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you became the Director of Innovation at Haskell?
Yeah, absolutely. So I come from kind of like a different background, so architectural engineering, which is kind of like a merge between design and engineering and project management in a sense. Worked for a couple of years, kind of like an owner's rep, trying to stand up a lot of these bank branches and stuff like that. And then decided to pursue master's in building construction at University of Florida. Go Gators. And I get that question a lot. It's like, why PhD? Why did you go all the way to PhD? I'm like, well, 2010, 2011, there was not a lot of jobs. So I decided to just continue. And then there was like a scholarship. And so that's just something that kind of continued on with the education part. And after I completed my PhD at the University of Florida, I joined Haskell as kind of like the VDC coordinator and, constantly looking at new technologies and to help me complete my work better, more efficient. And that kind of like, climbed up the ranks, so to say, and get into this very cool gig that I have with constantly looking at emerging technologies, piloting and talking internally to employees about any ideas that they have, right? And something that we can act on.
Yeah, well said, and a great segue into my next question. So your book that recently published, right, and I've got my copy here, Paperless
Nice.
Builders. So all about construction tech. Can you share the main drivers behind the push for paperless construction?
Yeah, so the book kind of a trajectory, kind of like the same idea of starting to look at technologies to improve what I was doing, and then kind of like helping the VDC become better, so for the betterment of VDC, and then helping Haskell become better. So looking at the entire ecosystem of design and building and construction. And now kind of like this is the next phase of this, which is like for the betterment of the industry. So I'm trying to share all the lessons that I've learned throughout, my career here at Haskell and before that, in terms of like, how do you look at technologies well, the book has three different parts, right? It's like starts with the why. Why do we even need technologies? Why do we need to move away from paper? And the main premise behind that is like paper is dated, paper is old, paper is a maze. You look at anything that you print, and as soon as you hit print, that probably is dated, right? Because the drawings are constantly updating, the designs is constantly changing. There's a lot of coordination happening. That's the main why behind why do we need to move away from paper-based. I also mentioned paper-like processes, which is something that's similar to paper, which is like a disconnected communication. So we're talking about emails, Excels, and PDFs. And then the second part of the book is the what technology types are out there that can help solve for these problem statements and move us away from paper-based and paper-like processes. And then the last part is my favorite, which is a framework of how do you evaluate and implement technology solution in a structured, methodical way in your own company in order to kind of get to that ultimate vision of paperless builders. I'm not saying like everybody needs to kind of become a completely paperless, but that's kind of like the vision, that's the trajectory that I see the industry going towards.
And I do like the breakdown of the book into the three parts. And I think that last part is, at least in my experience, right, it's the hardest. Getting the implementation piece right, getting people to actually use it. Because if the field's not using it, it's it's
100%.
ultimately not worth much.
Yeah, and the framework that I have is called Builders, which is kind of like a play also on the title of the book. But it's an acronym, so it like each letter stands for a part of the framework. Starting with benchmarking, you have to understand your processes, process mapping, technology stack, mapping all of these things out to understand how you can apply the technologies and where do they fit, what are the gaps that you need to kind of ingest. And then the users, that's people. It's all about people. If you're not talking to people, if you're not getting their buy-in, don't waste your time trying to implement technologies, because the people will make or break any technology implementation that you have in any company. So that's a very important part. And I go into more details on, how to approach the users, how to talk to them, and how to kind of like get them excited about the vision for this, digital transformation. It's not about just for the sake of digital transformation or just for the sake of the bottom line. It's at the end of the day, it's about providing the best work environment for your employees and your workers, safest, more efficient work site that you can provide. And the rest of the letters kind of go through the process of the benchmark, and the users are kind of like, it's a cycle. So you're constantly evaluating technologies and talking to the people and benchmarking processes. But once you find the right users that you want to work with, the right technology that works for you, the right process that you're going to ingest it in, and then you go to the I, which is implementation plan, making sure that we're all aligned on objectives, on roles and responsibilities, on success criteria. And then you go to learning, which is onboarding, training, user guides, all that stuff. D is for driver. You have to have somebody who is a champion, who's like a super user of this technology that helps drive it forward, right? And it can't be me. It can't be the innovation manager or the technology kind of IT folks. It needs to be somebody from the group that's looking to implement that tech. And then the last part of this is, evaluation, which is constantly getting the feedback, reporting on it, compiling everything in a report. And the S is in parentheses because it's optional, and that's scaling, taking the technology from 1 or 2 pilots all the way to kind of like an SOP standard.
Which makes perfect sense to me. And throughout that entire breaking down of the acronym, like I just heard you keep saying people every step of the way. And I think it is easy to lose sight of that because, finding the technology and what it claims to do, that's like table stakes. That's not even like challenging anymore. It's getting it into the right hands and actually getting it used. That's the challenging part.
100%. Yeah. As I said, people will make it work and find creative ways that we, as even like the innovation group, couldn't even think about. Or if they're not bought in, they'll find ways to make it not work.
It's so true. So, and going back to some of the overall or high level benefits, right? So like, what are the key benefits of going paperless in construction? And then how do you address concerns like learning curve or resistance to change when you're trying to get a construction tech adopted?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we start with kind of when we're talking about the move away from paper-based and paper-like processes. It's really, and in the book I break it down into 4 different categories. So you start with safety. Most important topic in the industry is safety, making sure that your workers on the job site are safe and aware of any hazards, and mental health issues too. That's a whole section in the chapter, and it talks about how do we do that today, right? How do we deliver materials on safety training or reporting on any incidents or near misses and stuff like that? And the paper-based and paper-like processes that we have today are just not cutting it. They're not delivering the content. They are not capturing a lot of the data points that we can be capturing in order to avoid making that same issue in the future. So safety is one big chapter. And then you go to communication, which is that's like the largest bucket, talking about how do we even talk to each other, right? How do we understand the different stakeholders that have different priorities and have different kind of goals and things that they want to focus on. And it goes through so many different things, so like estimating and scheduling and material delivery and tracking and all that stuff on a job site. And then the third part of this, which is kind of progress tracking. How do we make sure that we know how much we completed, right? And right now it's like they look at it like, oh yeah, I think we finished 50%, or yeah. Or like a paper clip and you're just kind of writing down and like walking around. So it's archaic. It's still in the past. It's keeping a lot of different things that we can enhance in terms of productivity, in terms of you can't improve what you don't measure, right? So if you don't measure how much you're doing per day, how do you say that we need to improve it, or we need to make it, faster or more productive? And then the last part, which is also an important aspect of the problem statement, which is mitigating risk and understanding the contract, understanding what are we trying to achieve and how are we going to achieve it in terms of permits, in terms of waivers, in terms of so many different things that, that we need to keep track of. And the amount of Excel spreadsheets that go around on a job site that tracks so many different things, and they're sporadic and they're disconnected and they're saved on somebody's local drive. It's not efficient. So that's kind of the main drive of trying to kind of avoid that whole paper-based and paper-like processes.
And I think everyone would agree that it comes back to a group or a company's culture, getting people to buy into the change and essentially say why does it matter? Why can't I just do it the way I've always done it? So Hamzah, can you explain what culture of innovation means to you in the context of the construction industry?
100%. And that's an extremely important part. And in the book, I also kind of reference The Culture Code, which is a book by Daniel Coyle. Amazing read, highly recommended. And in The Culture Code, Daniel talks about the three main aspects that you need in order to create a culture that's positive, that's exciting to be part of, that's inviting, and which is, you're talking about creating psychological safety. And that's one of the main things that when I go and talk to somebody about a new cool technology and look how this can make you more efficient, the first thing that comes to their heads is like, wait a minute, are you trying to replace me? Is this going to take my job? No. You have to create that psychological safety, making sure that people are safe in their jobs, that you're not taking away their jobs, you're making them more efficient so they can, be more productive, be happier, they can go home at 5 p.m. They don't have to get stuck until 8 or 9 p.m. trying to finish something. So that's step one. And then the second part is sharing vulnerabilities. So when you approach people, you need to talk to them in a sense of, I need your help. I don't know how to implement this technology, or even if it's worth implementing, right? You're the one that know the process, that know the problem statement. I need your help to see if this is worth implementing or investigating or not, right? So the culture code really kind of goes through that. And then the last part of it is painting the vision. You have to show them why this is going to be important for them. What's in it for me, right? Nobody cares about, yes, this is going to make the project more profitable, the company more profitable. We're going to, get more projects out of this, but what's in it for me? What's in it for you? And what does that vision look like? And how, the more clearly you paint the vision for where we're going to become a digital first company, the more you get that buy-in from the users. They're like, all right, yeah, I want to be part of that vision. I don't want to be left behind, somewhere else.
And that last piece, Hamzah, is I can't speak to how many times I've experienced it, and it didn't really click until it was actually one of my managers said, hey, it's you go to these guys or gals in the field and they care about getting their job done, but ultimately it's what's in it for me. And it's not that it's selfish, but
it's not.
You need to give them, you need to motivate people to buy into what you're trying to sell, the vision and the overall spread. The easiest way to do is just say, hey, this is what's in it for you. If you do X, Y, and Z, here's how it's going to benefit you. And it's such a simple value proposition that I think gets missed instead of essentially trying to shove stuff, in people's faces that just ultimately doesn't work.
We tried that. And I can tell you from experience that does not work. So top-down approach of technology and innovation and trying to change things only goes so far, right? And bottom-up organic growth, word of mouth, believe it or not, even when you get somebody who's, they look at it at the first and they're like, yeah, this could be interesting. Let me try it out. And then they try it out and they kind of get hooked. And this is going to be oh, wait, this is actually saving me time and effort. But then what happens is they start talking to other people. They're like, oh yeah, you guys are still struggling with that in your project. Look what we're doing over here, and kind of start spreading that way. It's really exciting to see that organic growth of technologies within a company.
Which again goes back to mindset and culture. A great segue into our next question. How do you guys foster a mindset of innovation within your teams at Haskell, especially when you're working on long-term projects?
Yeah, it's a long-term play too, right? It's never going to happen overnight. And part of what we do is we have a structured innovation program where 2 to 3 times a year, we open up kind of like with a question. We say, how might Haskell do this better, right? And we keep it kind of like open-ended, but at the same time, we're trying to solve a specific aspect. And we get so many different submissions, ideas from across the company. We kind of compile that. We talk to a lot of the people that submitted ideas and act upon some of them and share. So this is the most important part, right? It's like, because I've seen companies where they have like this suggestion box, right? It's like, oh yeah, give us your best ideas. Here's where you send them. But then it kind of goes into an abyss, and nobody really knows what happens.
That suggestion box actually funnels right into a trash can. That's how I always say it.
Yes, which is unfortunate. But like, in order to cultivate that culture, you really need to be spreading the word on what did we do with the ideas that were submitted, right? It's not just that we got so many ideas. That's great. But what did you do with them, right? And how far did they go? And you want to share that. But the cultivation of the whole innovation movement within Haskell comes to, actually we have that coming up next week, which is Big Pitch event, which is kind of like a Shark Tank style event where we get ideas from across the company and we select the top 5 ideas and work with them in developing business plans. And this could be anything. This isn't like a specific question that how might we do something better. This is like, give us anything that would help Haskell become better, that would make us, a revenue generating idea from even outside of our immediate kind of like ecosystem and where we work. And once we kind of like establish those business plans with them, we coach them on how to pitch it, and we get them in front of the executives and say, here you go, have at it. You have 10 minutes to present and 10 minutes for Q&A, and the best idea wins. And you win kind of like money for the idea submitter themselves, kind of like as a prize money, but also win funding to see that idea come to life. And we've had 3 patents come out of that, and 4 different products that we're using internally, and some of them we're actually also bringing to market very soon.
And that, Hamzah, like what you said right there is a key piece on the innovation side. It took me a while to figure out, but you can go find any piece of tech, right? They'll claim it's going to do X, Y, Z, 10X your returns are great. How do you make that business case to the people who actually cut the checks, the executives who are in charge and are making the decisions? Because if I'm on your innovation team, we both think it's great. Yeah. What about the guy who's actually going to pay for it, or the gal who's actually going to pay for it? So I can speak from experience in saying how that is so important. I know your book touches on, standardized and structured innovation plans, business use cases, et cetera, which again, I'll just say it's been a great read so far, and I'd recommend it to anyone who's really trying to be more methodical about their innovation program.
Yeah, like speaking the business language, and so we kind of like, as the innovation group, we function as the central kind of connection between the people that are closest to the problem statement, who knows what can be changed or enhanced, and the business folks, like the executives that say, wait a minute, where are we spending resources and time and costs? and kind of speak both. We have to speak both languages, right? And we have to talk to these people in their language and these people in their language, and kind of get them together in this event, which is it's an exciting opportunity for a lot of people in Haskell, but it's something that I'm very grateful to be a part of, and wake up every day excited to go to work.
Honestly, and that's one of my favorite parts about being in the innovation space. But this is actually another good segue into our next question. So on leadership, whether it be at the executive level, at the innovation team level, how do you see the role of leadership evolving as construction becomes more technology driven and innovation focused?
Yeah, so we have amazing leaders at Haskell, and part of it is they don't. And this is kind of like a misconception about leaders. You need to know everything, right? It's like, no, you need to get the right people in the right places and let them do their job. That's literally what it comes down to, right? And we have amazing leadership at Haskell where they're like, we know the future is going to be different. We know the technology is coming to change a lot of things. We don't know how that's going to affect us. We don't know how it's going to impact us. But here's a dedicated group. Here's resources. Here's budget for that. Go figure it out. We don't know how. That's your job, right? And having that freedom of going out and trying things and having the ability to fail without, extreme consequences is like, oh man, you failed how many pilot projects and you're out. We don't need that. No, this is all part of the innovation culture, right? It's like you have to try new things And when you try new things, you are going to ultimately fail because they're new things you haven't done before, right? And you learn from that, right? And you learn from it, and then you try again, and you implement it in a different way or implement a different technology. And that's why we have great leadership at Haskell, is like that one day allow us to be free and not dictate how we should be doing our jobs, but at the same time, kind of like having that innovative mindset of, yes, there are going to be failures, and we're going to learn from that, and we're going to become better in the next round of that.
And a quote I keeps popping up in my head for a number of reasons, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. So with leaders, their job isn't to physically be the boots on the ground, whether that's putting work in place or managing it, or in the case of innovation team, running pilots and innovation projects. Like you said, their job is to put the right people in the right seats. So although, innovation and the technologies that we're bringing to the table today are new, but what hasn't changed is those leaders putting now, instead of maybe a traditional, construction project manager, an innovation team in the right seat to let them essentially do their job.
Yeah, you have to let them do their job, by the way. That's a Steve Jobs quote that I always go back to. Is like, the stupidest thing you do is like you hire smart people and then you tell them what to do. It's like, no, you hire smart people so they can tell you what to do, right?
And remove roadblocks for them, and just all the basics of leadership that don't change, whether you're dealing with a traditional process or something new and innovative.
Yeah.
And another piece of this, Hamzah, that I'm interested to hear about, what role does sustainability play in the future of construction technology? Because I guess if you're looking at overall trends in the construction industry, right? Contact, digital, innovation, whatever you want to call it, and sustainability are both pretty high up there.
It is, and it's actually part of the risk chapter in the why of the Paperless Builders, because it's a risk. It's a risk on so many different fronts, right? It's planetary risk, because so far we don't have a different planet to live on, right? So we need to make sure that we are conserving, that we are cognizant of how we are spending these resources that we have. And construction is one of the highest carbon footprint and carbon producing and waste generating industries in the world. We waste so much material that it's mind boggling. And technology is here to help us with that. So there's so many different tools, and it starts with the conceptual design of a facility, right? On understanding what equipment are going to go there, what materials are going to go into that design, where they're going to come from, and then how are we going to get them to the job site, right? In terms of like transportation, carbon footprint, but also, are we going to get them to the job site in a pallet and then cut them there? Or are we going to prefab things in a factory and cut down on that waste and reuse some of that waste before we ship it to the job site? So there's so many different tools and technologies that can help with the design side of ensuring that everything that trickles down from there is sustainable, right? Is conscious of the environment, of the materials, of everything that we are selecting, and it all starts with design. If we're not designing a sustainable building, it doesn't matter how conscious the GC is. They're ultimately going to have a higher carbon footprint because that's just how it is designed.
And I think, and you can pull, examples from, like you said, even like architectural engineering, right? Like facade and building design to make sure that your building is as energy or thermally efficient as possible. And I can see so many use cases down the line, from initial conception with an architect's initial conversation with an owner, all the way to punching out, closing out, and making sure jobs are fully performed. So it's absolutely it's an exciting time to be in the industry.
Absolutely.
So Hamzah, I mean, this has been awesome. I've learned a lot, both just talking to you today, right? Reading your book. What final piece of advice can you share with engineers and professionals in the AEC industry who are looking to innovate and make an impact on their careers?
Start today. The wave is coming, and it's a huge wave of change, of technology, of things are going to look drastically different in the industry within the next 5 years. And if you're not on that wave right now, you're going to be under the wave. So start now, start today. Look at what's happening out there, attend conferences, talk to peers, understand the landscape, and make that first move, right? First move of, well, maybe we can be doing something a little bit better here, right? And it's all about incremental improvements. You don't think that you're going to start today and tomorrow you're going to be completely paperless. That's insane. You cannot achieve that. It's all about incremental improvements, very small, very steady, and that usually wins the race.
Well said. It's don't try to boil the ocean, and think about what you can do today to move it forward. And to the audience, that's part of the reason why we put this podcast on, to give engineers and other professionals in this space ideas on how they can take what you're listening to here and bring them back to your firms and make change. And Hamzah, again, thank you so much for joining us today. If the listeners have more questions about what we've talked about, or just want to, bring something to your attention and run something by you, what's the best way to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn almost all the time. So reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. So look up Hamzah Shanbari. I'm probably the only one that's going to pop up if you type my name correctly. And I'm more than happy to connect with a lot of different listeners and kind of chat and answer questions. And
absolutely. Hamzah, thank you again so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick.
Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.